They find a bunch of different men named Shane McKay. They find a doctor named Shane McKay, and they go to find him, and he's black. And I don't know if you've looked at this girl, but ain't no one drop of anything in there.
Tweaked my back earlier, and I need to stand and not put pressure on. It's not my back, it's like, I don't know. Nobody cares about this. Anyways, let's get to talking about season 2 of Degrassi. Initially, Degrassi was just a middle school. Like, in the first season, it was just a middle school. But now that these characters have all moved up to the 9th grade, it's turned into, like, I guess, a senior high school. You know those schools that have, like, 7th through 12th grade, as opposed to just having 6th through 8th grade and then 9th through 12th grade. That, I feel like, that, like, middle school and then high school thing, I feel like is a very American, like, United States thing, whereas, like, junior or senior high schools are more part, like. So for this season, we're not going to go through episode by episode. We're just going to go through, like, the major story arcs that happen across the season, and I'll tell you as the characters change how they show up and interact with each other, which is of course to be expected because these are all teenagers going through puberty. Oh, also for this whole, like, opening, there's a lot of moments in season 2 especially that could be triggering for people, and I will try and shout them out whenever I can, but if I forget, I really just want to apologize in advance. But this whole season 2 opener is a huge trigger warning for child abuse. Season 2 of Degrassi opens with one of the most groundbreaking plot lines in television history. I somehow forgot to print out a picture for this character, so I'm deeply embarrassed about that, but just imagine that he's right here in this space, and I'll put his picture up here in post. In the first 2 episodes of season 2, we are introduced to a new character named Craig Manning. Craig is initially at the park taking pictures of a little girl. People who remember the first episode of the first season will be like, why the fuck is he taking long exposure photographs of a little girl with a very expensive camera? What is happening? The girl is at the park playing with her babysitter, Emma Nelson. But we start to see that Emma is the girl's babysitter, and Joey appears to be the girl's dad. Joey notices Craig taking pictures at the park, and Joey is like, hey, Craig, you can come over and say hi. Like, you don't have to hide in the bushes like a creep. And Craig says, well, he doesn't say anything. He just runs away on his bicycle and goes home. So Joey has seen Craig, and Emma has also seen Craig, and she's like, he's kind of cute. But Craig clearly does not want to be seen. When he gets home, Joey is on the phone with his dad. So what we learn very quickly is that Craig's dad used to be married to Craig's mom, obviously. I don't know if that's obvious, actually. But then Craig's mom ended up leaving his dad for Joey, marrying Joey, having Angie, and then she sadly passed away like a couple years before the show starts. So Joey's on the phone with Craig's dad, and he's like, I saw Craig at the park today. He was taking pictures of Angie. I just want him to know that he can come say hi. Like, he doesn't have to lurk in the bushes. He can hang out with us. Like, she is his half sister. And Craig's dad is like, he's not going to come say hi. I don't want him to ever see you guys again. So he's going to stay away from you. So sorry that he disturbed you. And it's clear that Craig's dad is not happy that Craig has made any attempts to go see his half sister. Because Craig's dad, after finding out from Joey that Craig was hanging out at the park near Angie, beats him horribly with a belt, and he's like, I don't want you ever associating with those people again, because Craig's dad has never forgiven Joey for stealing his wife away from him. I mean, but he loves Angie because Angie is kind of really his last tether to his mom, Julia. So Craig is like, oh fuck, I need to be more careful with how I'm attempting to visit my sister. Craig has also seen Emma at this time, and he knows that they go to school together, and Emma is like, look, I know your dad said that you kind of like can't come over my house or see Angie at all, but my mom is having a birthday party and Joey and Angie are going to be there. Oh yeah, did I mention that Angie is played by the younger sister of the actress who plays Manny Santos Steele, or Alexis Steele, and this is Cassandra Steele. So Craig is like, yeah, I'll come, because he wants to see his little sister. He goes to Spike's birthday party and Joey sees him there and he's like, look, I'm sorry about what's going on with your dad. I would love for you to be able to hang out with Angie, but your dad just doesn't want it, so there kind of isn't really anything that I can do. He basically has the mindset of, yeah, I did fully steal that man's wife, so I kind of have to honor the things that he's saying. And Joey also doesn't know at this point that Craig is being abused by his dad, whose name I'm pretty sure is Alan Manning. Oh, the other thing to know about Craig's dad is that I think he's a doctor. He is a professional. He's like very well respected in his field. So he, of course, like a lot of abusers, is really the last person who you would expect to be horrifically beating his son at home. Craig is at this party. He's having fun. He's having a great time, but he has to get home before his dad does, so that his dad doesn't find out that he was out with these people that his dad doesn't want him associating with. So, the other thing about like Craig's dad being super rich is that Craig has like a dark room for his photography in his house, and honestly, photography is a very expensive hobby, so that's kind of the signal to the audience that Craig comes from money. Craig rushes home after the party because he's afraid that his dad is going to get home from work before he can get there, and if his dad gets home from work first, then he's going to be able to snoop around in all of his stuff. But he successfully gets home early. So he goes down to his dark room to take photos, but somehow his dad figures out that he was at Spike's birthday party with Joey and Angie, and his dad comes down to the dark room and starts beating him with a book. It's horrible. He's like punching him and kicking him and hitting him with this book, and bruises his ribs so badly that he has like huge splotches all over his side, and his dad breaks Craig's camera. Like, Craig's camera is kind of his only real lifeline. It's something that he's able to do that his dad kind of has no power over, and so once the camera is broken, Craig is really heartbroken. While this is all happening, the B plot is basically just that JT really wants a date. And even though Miss Mamas is interested, he doesn't want her. He wants to go out with Paige because Paige is the HBIC and she's so pretty and cute and fun and whatever. He asks Paige out and he gets rejected, but then Paige's friend Hazel, Spinner, and Jimmy dare her to. So the next day, after Craig's dad has horribly beaten him, he's, as you know, the cycle of abuse goes, he's like being super nice. He's like, here's some money so that you can go get a camera. We're going to have a nice dinner tonight. We're going to watch movies. I'm going to buy pizza, all of this stuff. He's making all of these promises to Craig, and he gives him this envelope full of cash so that Craig can go get a new camera. So Emma knows that Craig has issues with his dad, but she doesn't know quite how bad the issues are. She doesn't know that his dad is like physically abusive against him. So Emma offers to let Craig babysit his little sister, because she's like, well, they're related. Harm could come of it. And so he does. He takes Angie to the park. They're hanging out. They're having fun. And he's telling Angie this story about how they're going to move to British Columbia together, and he has all this money, and he's just going to get a train ticket, and they're just going to run away. And he'll take care of her, and she'll be his family, because he doesn't really feel like he has a family right now. And she's like, oh, cool, fun. You know, I love Craig. He's my brother. Also, when they're playing together, Angie is trying to tickle Craig, but she touches the part of his body that is horribly bruised, and she's like, what the hell happened to you? And he's like, oh, I got into a fight with a dinosaur. They're out for a little bit too long, and Joey gets back early and notices that Emma is not at the house with Angie, and he's like, where's my kid? And she's like, but she doesn't cover very well, and she basically just tells him, look, Craig took her to the park, so it's okay, don't worry about it. So he goes to go get Angie. He's still a little spooked because he didn't know that Craig was going to be there to take Angie to the park, but he's like, oh, it's okay, you know, like, this is Craig. Craig is Angie's older brother. This is fine. But then Angie, who is 5, starts talking, and she's like, Craig said that we're gonna get on a train and go to British Columbia, and he's got a bunch of money in his pocket, and he's gonna take me with him, and we're gonna be a family. And she's basically, like, telling the plan to Joey, and she's like, wait, can Daddy come? Like, all of this stuff, and Joey is like, I'm sorry, you're not gonna take my child with you? You're not gonna kidnap my little girl? people. So he yells at Craig and tells him to stay away from them and not come near them ever again. And Craig is crushed because quite literally, like, Angie was really his only tether to his mom who has passed away, and also to some semblance of having a family that is normal and fun and sweet and innocent. And again, remember, at this point, Joey doesn't know what Craig's dad is doing to him. Craig gets home, and he's expecting his dad to immediately start beating him. But his dad comes home, and he's totally fine. He has a bunch of Chinese food, and he's rented a bunch of movies, and they're going to have, like, a guy's night and hang out. He tells his dad he didn't get a chance to get the new camera, but his dad is like, oh, that's okay. We're going to go together and buy it, and we're going to do this. I bought it. As usual with abusers, the day after a really big outburst, he is incredibly apologetic and effusive towards Craig. Then the phone rings, and guess who it is? Joey. And Joey is telling Craig's dad, like, look, I think you should know he's made this plan to run away. He was at the park with Angie, even when you said that he shouldn't be. And he told her that he was going to take her to British Columbia, and he's not taking my kid anywhere, and all of this stuff. And as soon as the phone rings, Craig is like, oh, I bet that's Joey coming to snitch on me. I need to get the fuck out of here. Because he knows that his dad is going to absolutely lose it. Because he's already told him multiple times at this point, and beaten him multiple times for hanging out with the Jeremiahs. Craig runs upstairs and starts packing a bag, and he calls Sean, because at this point him and Sean are kind of friends. Like, they met at school, he's talked to him, they're cool, whatever. So he calls Sean and he's like, hey girl, you want to hang out? Let's go meet by the train tracks, I'm coming. And he throws his bag out of the window and escapes while his dad is coming up the stairs and beating the door of his bedroom in with a baseball bat. And it's heavily implied that his dad is going to beat him with that golf club when he is able to get through the door. So Craig is essentially fighting for his life at this point, because his dad has beaten him so horrifically the day before that his whole body is covered in bruises. And if he gets beaten with a golf club, it's likely that he could fracture or break a rib and, like, puncture a lung. Like, he might die it's life or death at this point. So he runs away to go hang out with Sean, and him and Sean meet at some train tracks, and they're talking about life, and he's like, I just want to get out. I just want to go to British Columbia. Like, I'm so sad. I don't want to be living this life anymore. And Sean is like, yeah, my life sucks too. My girlfriend left me. This other girl I was kind of into is, like, hot and cold, and I don't really know what's going on. And then Craig asks Sean, he's like, did your parents ever beat you? He's like, well, they're not really in my life, but no. Do yours? And Craig doesn't answer him, but they're walking along the train tracks, and, you know, like, when you're on train tracks, you can feel the rumble underneath you of the approaching train. So Sean feels it and he gets off the track, but Craig just turns around and he starts looking at the train. He's, like, laughing and screaming and giggling, and he's not moving, and Sean is like, you got to get out of the way, like, you're gonna get hit by a train. And it's clear that Craig is behaving midge. Sean tackles Craig off the train tracks. Oh, I think also, like, when he tackled Craig, he saw the bruise on his body, and he was like, oh shit. And is like, what the fuck is going on, man? Like, asking me if my parents ever beat me. You're screaming, crying, and throwing up as an oncoming train approaches. What's going on? And Craig just, like, laughs maniacally and runs away. Then Sean goes to Emma and he's like, look, I know you don't really like me right now, but you're the only person I know who also knows this guy somewhat, and I think something bad is going on. Like, I think his dad beats him, and not like a spanking every now and again, like beats him up really bad. And Emma's like, oh, we got to do something about this. So together they go to Joey and they're telling him basically, like, we think Craig is being abused physically by his dad. And Joey initially is like, that's not possible. Like, Albert is a doctor. He's incredibly intelligent. Like, he's rich. He wouldn't beat up his son. But then Angie starts talking about the fact that when she was with Craig at the park earlier in the day, she saw the bruises on his body. And she's like, yeah, but he got into a fight with a dinosaur. Like, that's what he told me. And then Joey is like, oh shit, we gotta find him. Like, he's gonna go to British Columbia, he's gonna run away, and we're never gonna see him again. They all get together and they start searching for him, but Joey realizes that he's probably going to his mom's grave to say goodbye one last time. So Joey goes to Julia's grave, and there Craig is crying, and Joey finally asks Craig, he's like, does your dad beat you? And Craig finally is like, yeah, and it's really bad, and I'm scared. Joey steps up in that moment and he's like, look, you're gonna come stay with me we're going to go get your stuff from your house and you're going to live with me from now on because I'm not sending you back to that house where you could get murdered at any point. So he's like, yeah, you're not going back to the house. So the next day they go together to Craig's dad's house, and Craig's dad is doing the classic abuser 1-2 step where he's like, I'm never going to do it again. I'm so sorry. You're just abandoning me like everybody else abandons me. Don't leave me, especially for Joey, just like your mom did, to guilt Craig. And Craig is like, you always say that you're never going to do it again. Always. And then you do it again and again and again, and I'm done with it. And that's the end. He ends up going to live with Joey and his little sister. And it is honestly like, if I recommend you to watch any of these episodes, there's a lot in season 3 that I'm going to recommend you to watch. But if you're not like super triggered by violence, I would say to watch this because it's actually really powerful. And Jake Epstein, who plays Craig, is a really good actor. That is the opening of season 2. Like, Degrassi does not play about their season openings, okay? The season 2 opening, the season 3 opening, they all go fucking hard. We're going to get into the rest of season 2. So I want to get into the next episode of the series, which is called Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I just think this one is fun. So basically there's an 80s themed dance happening at school, but only 8th graders are allowed to go. Emma and Manny both kind of have a little crush on Craig, and Craig is now friends with Emma because she saved him from his horrible abusive dad. So he's like, I'll sneak you guys in, like, just get dressed, come to the school, and I'll get you guys into the dance. So Emma ends up dressing as Cyndi Lauper, but Manny looks at her and she's like, you look like your mom in the 80s. Like, you look exactly like her. And I was like, no, I don't. But she does. She has the same hair because her mom had Cyndi Lauper hair. And Manny dresses as Molly Ringwald. There's also this whole plot of a dance competition at the 8th grade dance. Spinner and Jimmy are basically rivals because I think you win like tickets to a Toronto Maple Leafs game or some Canadian bullshit from winning the dance competition, and also a bunch of street cred with the ladies. So Jimmy goes to the dance dressed as Michael Jackson, and I don't know who Spinner goes to the dance dressed as, but their other biggest rival is Marco Del Rossi, who's introduced for the first time in this episode. Marco is the front runner for the breakdancing competition, and initially Jimmy and Spinner are teamed up to beat him, but then they start fighting amongst themselves, as they always do when they try and work on anything together. So they are now trying to beat one another, but they start sabotaging each other in a series of unfortunate events. Jimmy's leather pants split open, and I don't remember what happens to Spinner. I think he gets like itch powder put in his clothes or something, but Marco ends up winning the dance competition and gets a bunch of ladies on his arm, including Hazel. In the meantime, Emma and Manny are in the dance with Craig, and they're both trying to get him to like them, and he eventually goes up to Emma at the end of the dance and he's like, I like Manny, do you think you could set something up between the two of us? And Emma's really sad, but I'm kind of geeked because I love every time that Emma takes an L. When Emma falls in love, more like when Emma gets her heart broken. A bunch of other stuff happens, but that's like the main storyline. Next, we get into another one of the biggest parts of the story arc in season 2, which is Karma Chameleon. Ashley, as we have noted, is on the outskirts of the 8th grade kids. She went to the dance, but she was like kind of off to the side with Terry, and Terry is her last ally in her grade. She has decided in the episode Karma Chameleon that she is going to get back into her HBIC spot that Paige has been occupying since she was kicked out because of her ecstasy-fueled shenanigans at the end of season 1. In order to do that, she is going to wear super hot outfits to school, get great grades, try and get Jimmy back because Jimmy was a key part of her status as the top bitch at Degrassi. Like, being in a respected couple gave her more cachet, but she's also like playing the field because she's single, you know, she's not tied down to anybody. So while she's flirting with Jimmy, trying to get him to like her again, she also accepts to go out on a date with Sean, who still kind of has a crush on her after she rocked his world in Jagged Little Pill. So she's kind of like doing the rounds, apologizing to everyone, and Jimmy is really quick to forgive her because he misses her, he misses their relationship. If we remember last season, her house was a refuge for him away from the loneliness of his giant mansion, and everyone is able to forgive her except Paige, and Paige is like I'll forgive you for now, but if they end up being wrong, she better watch out. So Paige is kind of like on the defensive already, especially because Ashley ripped her to shreds in the series 1 finale. Ashley has accepted a date with Sean, and Terry is like, do you think that's a good idea? Like, you've been flirting with Jimmy a lot, and he thinks that you guys are going to get back together. So do you think that you should be going out with Sean? And Ashley basically says to Terry, you don't get it, but you'll understand it someday when somebody wants to date you. She really hit Terry where it hurts. And Ashley has a knack for doing this over the course of the series, just like doing underhanded or saying backhanded things that really hit people where it hurts, almost without even really thinking about it. So Terry's feelings are super hurt by what she's just said, and as we saw in the last season, she has a big insecurity about nobody ever liking her, and Ashley knows that because Ashley was the one who she was crying to after the dance when Spinner ditched her for Paige because she was too drunk. So Terry is now mad at Ashley as well, and Jimmy has found out that Ashley is going out on a date with Sean, and I think he calls her a whore, calls her a slut. Yes, after finding out that Ashley is going out on a date with Sean, and he gets into a fight with Sean. Their rivalry is alive and well, and he says that he is done with Ashley because he realized that she was just flirting with him to try and get back in with the rest of the group. Because Ashley has manipulated Jimmy and belittled Terry, Paige finally has the ammunition that she needed to prove that Ashley is secretly a bitch, and she ices her out again. And then Ashley tries to talk to Terry. She tries to go to her day 1 for comfort, and Terry is icing her out too because Terry is pissed at Ashley for what she said. So Ashley is off in Siberia looking gorgeous, crying alone on picture day at the beginning of 9th grade, and her tears are a part of her school portrait for that year. So the other subplot of this episode is that Toby has a crush on this girl named Kendra, who turns out to be Spinner's little sister, which I think is why Spinner isn't involved in this whole Ashley debacle. Spinner is bullying Toby, and he's like, you better not do anything wrong to my sister. But it doesn't end up meaning anything because Spinner's sister disappears at some point. Now we are on season 2, episode 5, and the only really important thing to know about this is that Emma's mom, Spike, has started dating Mr. Simpson. They kind of had crushes on each other when they were in middle and high school, these two, but Emma's mom was dating Emma's dad, so they never really could get together, and then she had a baby, so she was a little busy when everybody else was going out on dates, but the time is finally right and they're going out, and Emma doesn't really want anybody to know. They start dating around the same time as the school science fair. The only other thing to know about the science fair, Spinner's getting a bunch of erections. He doesn't understand why. His body is changing. He's going through puberty, and apparently that just happens if you have a penis. So he thinks it's because he's eating too much fruit for the science project, but I don't know. I think it's just because he has hormones. But the main thing that's going on is that Emma is doing a science project that is really well thought out. It's very smart, whatever. She's on track to win, but Liberty figures out that Emma's mom is dating Mr. Simpson, and she convinces Emma that the only reason that she would win the science fair is because of Mr. Simpson's bias. So Emma starts to get into her own head, and when she does win the science fair, she tries to yell at Mr. Simpson and tell him that she doesn't want a prize that is based off of him trying to get in her mom's good graces. He's like, I gave you the prize because you're smart, you dumb bitch. And then Emma has to apologize. They move on. The next episode is basically like a boys episode. We have Craig, Sean, Spinner, and Marco who decide to go on a joyride together because Craig's stepdad, Joey, has asked him to move a car at his used car lot, and Craig, for some reason, thinks that that means that he gets to drive whenever he wants. I think he's also a little bit older than everybody else, so he's like learner's permit age. He had also invited Jimmy to this outing because he's also friends with Jimmy, but Jimmy knew that Sean was coming, so Jimmy decided to stay home because he hates Sean. They go on a joyride. They're trying to get tickets to this concert, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They get caught. He gets in trouble. It's a good episode to figure out the personalities of all the different guys on the show. In the meantime, Ashley has started to hang out more and more with Ellie because they're both goth, and she wants to impress Ellie by getting a belly button ring because she thinks that Ellie is this tough chick who's got a lot going on in her life, which she kind of does, but Ellie is like basically just playing along with it to the point where Ashley's about to get the belly button ring, and then Ellie's like, you don't have to do this. Like, I already think you're cool. It's fine. And they remain best friends. Getting into major story arc territory, we have the two-parter Shout, which is centered around Paige. Paige is in the 9th grade now. She's grown up, and we're starting to kind of get to know her beyond her reputation as a bitchy social climber who will step over anyone who she needs to get to the top. You know, we saw her help out Emma in the first season, even though she immediately dogged her out after that. We saw her get to know Manny, even though she betrayed Manny immediately after that. And she's like best friends with Terry still, and Hazel, and getting close to Spinner. Spinner very obviously has a crush on Paige, but Paige is hoping to date up. You know, it's that thing that happens a lot in movies and TV shows where girls are like, I don't want to date the like young guys that are in my grade. I want to date like a fun, hot upperclassman who's mysterious because he goes to a different school. At the beginning of the episode, the Spirit Squad, of which Paige, Hazel, and Manny are a part, are cheering at a soccer game for Bardell High School, which is a neighboring high school to Degrassi. And I'm pretty sure Degrassi ends up beating Bardell, but that doesn't matter because Paige has set her sights on one of the players on the Bardell team named Dean. At the same time, Spinner is trying to get Paige to go out on a date with him. He basically like asks her if she'll go out with him, and she says, yeah, whatever, I'll do it, because she doesn't really have anything else to do. But Dean ends up coming up to Paige after Spinner walks away, and he's like, look, I'm having this party at my house. Do you want to come party? So Paige is like, oh, yeah, I do, because I want to be your girlfriend. So she comes up with an excuse for Spinner that her grandmother is in the hospital, and she tells him that and ends up going to the party with Hazel. Paige is at the party hanging out with Dean and his friends, and Dean's friends I think are in like 11th grade or something. They're a little bit older than her, and she's trying to like talk to them and keep up and like make chat, basically, you know, and they're like, who the fuck is this 9th grader? Like, this is a 14-year-old girl. What's going on? So she's a little embarrassed that nobody is really like biting and nobody is really engaging with her. Then one of Dean's female friends pulls Paige aside and is like, you know, I noticed that you were talking to Dean a lot. Just be careful. He seems really charming, but he's a little bit weird. Paige is like, you're just jealous. You just want him, and you're mad that me, a 9th grader, has him. Fuck off. So she like blows off this girl who tells her to be careful. While Paige is flirting with Dean, Hazel notices that Jimmy and Spinner have shown up at the party as well. So she's like, oh, you're here, you lied about your grandmother being in the hospital and you not being able to go out with Spinner tonight. Or she's like, we have to go. Paige doesn't want to go home because she's super close to like getting Dean to like her. So her and Dean decide that they're going to go upstairs and talk more. They go upstairs to a bedroom, and this is a huge trigger warning for sexual assault, because while they are making out, Dean ends up Paige. It's horrible, and you see a lot more of it on the screen than you should. And I remember I watched this when I was 4 years old, and my sister covered my eyes at all the bad parts. She was 9. So the next day at school, Paige is almost catatonic. Like, she's kind of not really, it's hard for her to grapple with what has happened to her the day before, but she is pretending as though nothing really that big happened between her and Dean. She tells Terry and Hazel that they just made out, but Jimmy overhears it, and he's like, I thought you were at the hospital with your grandmother. You were making out with Dean at his party. So he goes to tell Spinner what he overheard, and Spinner goes up to Paige and basically like screams at her and is like, you'll just open your legs for any guy who comes by, won't you? And she rightfully gets incredibly upset and slaps him across the face and runs off. So then Hazel is running after her, and the whole day Paige has been acting super weird, and Hazel is like, what the fuck is going on? Hazel, okay, she gets done dirty consistently throughout the show because she's the only bitch on this entire closet door that is a real friend throughout the entire series. She doesn't betray her friends. She doesn't lie to them. She doesn't mislead them. She doesn't trick them and then steal their men. She is solid, loyal, beautiful, funny, talented, and she gets one storyline the entire series, but I will digress. Her and Liberty, really, they hate black people. That's the answer. They hate black people because her and Liberty are the only people in this fucking closet door who are good friends consistently throughout the entire show, and they get done dirty at every turn. Oh, and Terry too. Damn, this is sad. Anyways, so she follows Paige into the bathroom to check up on her, and she's like, you've been acting weird all day. What the hell is going on? So Paige tells her, she's like, me and Dean, we didn't just make out, we had sex. And Hazel's like, oh my God, I didn't know, like, how was it? Are you okay? All of this stuff. Paige eventually is like, yeah, we had sex, but like, I didn't want to. And I kept saying no, and he just wouldn't stop. And then Hazel is like, baby, if you said no and you didn't want to, you didn't have sex. That's Paige. And Paige is like, don't say that. I don't want to know. No, that's not what happened at all. She kind of starts freaking out because it's difficult to be confronted with the truth of your violation. Doesn't want to accept that what happened to her is. Hazel really wants her to talk to someone because she's like, you're not going to be able to deal with this on your own. And Paige basically ends the episode denying it, saying nothing happened, and if something did happen, it's my fault anyway. Some unknown amount of time later, Paige is still really struggling to deal with what happened to her, but Terry tells her that there is a Battle of the Bands competition coming up. Whoever wins ends up winning a trip to LA or something. So Terry wants Paige to get the band back together, as it were. There's always a band in Degrassi. Like, Joey and Snake were a part of a band called Zit Remedy. Paige, Terry, Hazel, and Ashley end up being a part of a band. Craig is a part of a band with Jimmy and Spinner. Like, there's always a band. And I do have to say they're a lot better in the earlier seasons than they are in the later ones, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. Harry's like, let's get the band back together, but since we're not talking to Ashley, let's replace Ashley with Hazel. Now, this is another way that Hazel and the actress who plays her gets dogged out in this series. They, starting in season 2, were really incorporating different aspects of each actors' real life into their characters. So Terry has a story arc where she is a teen plus size model, which is true for the actor. Jimmy later on has a story arc where he starts to rap, which of course now he's Drake, like we know. Craig plays guitar and sings because the actor who plays him plays guitar and sings. And Andrea Lewis, the actress who played Hazel, was like, I really would like for her to have more of a story in the show. What if she sings? Because I sing in real life. And in this episode, instead of having her sing the way that she does, which is beautifully, they make it a comic relief that Hazel is really bad at singing and she's horribly tone deaf. So what do they have to do? Replace her with the white girl. Paige, because Hazel is so bad at singing, Paige and Terry have to get over their hatred of Ashley and invite Ashley back into the band because Ashley is the only person who's going to be able to potentially win the prize with them. That just feels like really rude and disrespectful to me. Like, I understand what the end goal was, but why she have to be collateral damage in the process? Like, that's just so misogynoir. That's what it is. They go to Ashley and begrudgingly ask her if she will rejoin the band, but Ashley is goth now. She's dark now. She knows what it is to lose things. And so she decides that she is going to write a super intense song for the Battle of the Bands competition. What's the song about? Ashley writes this song about and violation, and she's going to be the lead singer because she is the one who was the lead singer in the last iteration of the band. And Paige is like, I don't want to play this song. And Ashley's like, this is a very important topic. Like, we need to talk about this. We need to raise awareness about this. And Paige is like, you don't know anything about this. And she gets really upset and runs away. Ashley goes after her and she's like, why are you so upset? What the fuck is going on? Like, this isn't normal Paige vapid controllingness. This is like something deeper. So Paige finally confesses to Ashley that she was just recently sexually, and hearing Ashley write those lyrics and sing those songs that are so accurate to her experience while Ashley has never gone through the same thing was very triggering for her. Ashley apologizes to Paige for kind of insulting her and hammering the point in, but they come to the consensus together that it would be a good thing for Paige to sing the song herself, and it might be very cathartic for her. At the Battle of the Bands competition, where PMS is playing, Paige sings the song that Ashley has written. And as she's on stage singing, Dean comes into the room. And initially he's kind of like taunting her and laughing. And I think throughout the episode she's having flashbacks to what happened. But then she starts to sing very intently while staring him down. And people start to notice that she's singing this song about been staring at this guy. He gets uncomfortable and leaves the room. And she has a triumphant moment where even though they didn't end up winning the Battle of the Bands competition, they didn't win the trip to Los Angeles, she still was able to have the cathartic moment where she got to in some way confront her abuser in front of everybody. This moment leads her to eventually decide that it'll be a good idea for her to go talk to Miss Sauvé, who is the school counselor, about what's happened to her. Throughout this whole story arc, we kind of see, it's horrible to say that, like, Paige gets humbled by what happens to her. And I think it's also horrible to think that a character needs to be humbled and then decide that you are going to assault them as a means of doing that. But that really is the byproduct of what happens. Paige starts out the season very arrogant, devil may care. She's going to step on and run over whoever she needs to in order to get what she wants, and what she wants is to be popular and have cachet amongst the groups in the area. And then after she realizes that she's not untouchable, like bad things can happen to her too, that is when she kind of starts to be a little bit more aware of the people around her. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying it's what happened. I really hate to gloss over the next episode, but for the sake of time and also concision, we are not going to spend too much time on Mirror in the Bathroom, which is all about Toby. Also, I'm thinking about like the arcs that are most important to characters who end up being the biggest over the course of the series, and while Toby is there for most of the time, he never quite reaches the main character status that some of the other people do. This episode, he has decided that he's tired of being the computer geek, he's tired of being a nerd, but he still has a crush on Emma, he knows that Emma still likes Sean, and Sean is on the wrestling team. So his solution is that he is going to join the wrestling team in order to become cool or like become a jock or whatever. He joins, but he isn't quite the right weight to wrestle. I don't know anything about wrestling. I know there's like weight classes and welterweight, boxing, featherweight, lightweight. I'm a lightweight. He starts taking laxatives in order to lose weight. And I think this is a very important storyline because it, A, talks about eating disorders from a boy's perspective, not just from a young girl's perspective. We'll see that again later, but like this, I think, is groundbreaking in a way of saying like, oh yeah, you know, boys can have eating disorders too. And also, it's not the typical method of eating disorder that we see. He still has an eating disorder. He still has an unhealthy relationship with food, but he's abusing laxatives as opposed to other things that he could be doing. And it does kind of make me feel sad that this doesn't end up being really incorporated into his character over the course of the show. I think it's because of economy, and this is an ensemble cast. There's just so many characters. Like, you won't necessarily be able to develop all of them, but I honestly feel like if you aim to have an episode a season that focuses on each person, that could do it. But like, Toby's eating disorder is kind of like a one-off thing. Like, he remains a computer geek for the rest of the series, but him wanting to be a jock, wanting to transform, wanting to not be a nerd anymore, that doesn't really stay. And the psychological struggle that comes along with having a bad relationship with food doesn't quite stay either. So in this same episode, we're also talking about weight, and this is the episode where we find out that Terry is a plus size model. She's getting fat shamed by one of the classmates, and Spinner, Paige, and Hazel are trying to convince her to continue modeling, even though she's being fat shamed. And we also see Ashley kind of start to inch her way towards being a part of this group again, but she's not quite on the inside yet. The next episode, we start, again, an arc that will continue for a moment. Annie, who danced with Craig at the 9th grade dance, has a crush on him. She's really interested in him. She wants to go out with him, but he hasn't asked her out yet. So she decides that she's going to ask him out, and he's like, yeah, you know, I like you too. I thought you were cool at the dance. Let's go out. She's also having like intense fantasies about him, which is relatable to me because I used to have intense fantasies about my crushes when I was in middle and high school. I would just like sit in class and be like, she's a hopeless romantic, okay? And I am also a hopeless romantic. So they go out on the date. We don't get to see the date from an objective point of view, but the next day, they both recount how the date went. Manny is like, it was the best night of my life. He was such a gentleman. He was so sweet. We went to the fair. I was eating cotton candy. I was so beautiful. We danced together. It was so much fun. Craig goes and talks to his friends, Jimmy and Spinner, and he's like, she acted insane. It was absolutely bizarre. She acted super immature the entire time. She reminded me of my 5-year-old half-sister, which is an Easter egg because, again, the actress who plays Manny, her real younger sister was playing Craig's younger sister in the show. So Manny thinks they're absolutely 100% together now, and Craig is like, I gotta let her down somehow. When he's going up to break up with her, he kind of loses his nerve because he sees how much she likes him and he doesn't want to, like, crush her. So he's like, yeah, I can't wait for our next date too. He starts acting really distant, and Manny is like, I don't understand why he's acting so distant. He must be going through something. So she decides that what she's going to do is redecorate his locker for him. Cover it with pink and red heart. Tell him how much she loves and cares about him. He sees his locker and he's immediately embarrassed because he is a 14-year-old boy. He's upset with her. And then Ashley, who is in his grade and who he has had a couple of moments with, comes up and she's asking if he wants to sign a petition against genetically modified foods in the cafeteria. He's like, oh no, Ashley saw this. And he kind of like yells at Manny and she's like, I was just trying to be nice. Like, I didn't know that you had all these problems. It's like, she's in the 8th grade and he could have communicated himself better. He feels really bad about yelling at a 13-year-old girl and he apologizes to her, but they decide that he's like, I don't think you're quite ready to be in a relationship, and I don't think that I am the right person to be in a relationship with you. But Manny still has a huge crush on Craig. At the same time, Ellie has realized that she has a crush on Marco, and she has started writing anonymous love letters to Marco. But Marco thinks the love letters are coming from Hazel because of some things that Hazel said accidentally. Hazel, who also has a crush on Marco, allows him to believe that the love notes are coming from him when really they're coming from Ellie. Ellie goes to meet him in there's like a garden, there's like a courtyard in the middle of the school. She goes to meet him in the courtyard, and he's expecting to see Hazel, so Ellie gets really upset. He's like really excited. He's like, oh yeah, Hazel's coming. She's been writing all these love notes, blah, blah, blah. Then Ellie gets upset and runs away because it was her who was writing the love notes. But then Marco in that moment figures out that it was Ellie and he's like, oh yeah, no, I like you too, whatever. He asks her out on a date. They're going to start to be a thing. The next episode is the one and only episode that we ever get that focuses exclusively on Hazel, which is Don't Believe the Hype. It is Culture Day at Degrassi Community School. They pride themselves on their diversity, blah, 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 blah. And everybody has to bring something that is representative of their culture, food, clothes, dance, that is representative of their culture to Culture Day to present to the rest of the students. Manny is Filipino, so she's probably going to do something related to that. Paige is German, this is Paige. Paige is German, so she's got lederhosen. Marco's Italian, and I'm pretty sure his dad owns a restaurant, so his dad's gonna bring food. Hazel is anxious about Culture Day because she has told everybody that she is Jamaican. But in the morning, she goes to go get her jerk chicken from the Jamaican spot near the school, not from her family or something. She's wearing like a Rastafarian hat and all of this stuff. Very stereotypical Jamaican stuff. And while she's doing all of this, she's also kind of jumping on the anti-Muslim bandwagon that came right after 9/11 and making fun of this girl whose name I don't know because we never see her again. But this hijabi that goes to school with them, she's making fun of her and her Culture Day presentation because she is Muslim. And people have been like giving little jabs to the girl over the course of the year and like saying mean things about her. So she doesn't quite feel comfortable at Degrassi, but Hazel quickly becomes the worst offender amongst all of the people. The girl comes up to Hazel and she's like, Aden, that's not really a Jamaican last name. It's Somali, isn't it? And Hazel's like, don't ever fucking say that to me again. She doesn't say it like that, but she may as well have said it like that. At Culture Day, the Muslim girls' display is destroyed and there's Islamophobic graffiti or whatever on it, and everybody is really upset. But then everybody is like, well, Hazel was the one who was teasing her the most out of anybody, so it was probably her who did it. And in order to clear her name, Hazel has to admit that she is not Jamaican, her family is Somali, and she didn't tell anyone because she saw how badly the other Muslim kids at the school were being treated, so she hid her real heritage in order to to fit in, but now ready to stand out in solidarity with her Muslim family. It's actually kind of like a sweet ending. It's kind of an iconic episode, and it is very emblematic of that like 2001, 2002 after school special, don't be Islamophobic just because terrorism happened thing that I feel like a lot of us who are alive during 9/11 suffered through. That is Hazel's one and only story arc, and I would watch that episode if I were you, because this is this episode for some reason is like burned into my brain. I think maybe because she's black and I'm black, and I was like, oh, she looks like me. Oh, I'm excited to finally see something about her life. But you know, we don't meet her parents. We don't learn anything about what being Somali means. We just see her being pretend Jamaican and then saying, oh yeah, well, I'm Somali. No, that's it. It's also kind of weird because the actress who plays Hazel is actually Caribbean, not Somali. And I know there's a lot of Somali people in Canada, but I feel like if you were gonna portray a black Muslim person, you should cast a black Muslim person. And if you're not gonna portray a black Muslim person, they should have just let her be Caribbean. There's Muslim people in the I don't know. It doesn't matter. They had to tell the story that they had to tell at the time that they had to tell it. The next episode is a big 2-episode arc. At some point in this season, Snake proposed to Spike. Actually, I'm going to do this one in the morning. I'm signing off for now, but I will be back in the morning to go over season 2.
It's the next day. We've traded a depressant for a stimulant, and I'm here to finish the rest of season 2, Degrassi, The Next Generation. Okay, so we are precisely halfway through season 2, and I missed this at some point earlier, but earlier in the season, Snake proposed to Spike, and they are getting married. So we have finally come to the episode White Wedding, where Snake and Spike are getting married. They're like doing their marriage preparations. I also went to the library and printed out a picture for Craig, even though you can't really see his face. In White Wedding, we have the return of Caitlin, who is one of Spike's bridesmaids, and also Lucy is there as one of Spike's bridesmaids. You know, all the girls who were in Degrassi Junior High have come back to celebrate the marriage of their 2 good friends. So everything seems to be going about as wrong as it possibly could be as Spike and Snake are getting ready to get married. The first mishap, the cake ends up getting ruined. The second mishap, and I'll try and put in a picture here so that you can see exactly what happened, but for some reason Emma decided to get a home perm the weekend of her mother's wedding, and she asked Caitlin to do it, and they overprocessed her perm, so she looks a little wild with the insane curly perm that she's got going on. Another thing that's gone wrong. So Snake and Spike are talking about the possibility of having children at some point in the future, and Snake answers honestly, and he's like, you know, we've got Emma to take care of and think about and raise, and we have been waiting to be together for so long. Like, I've been waiting to finally get to be your guy forever since middle school. So he just wants to like spend some time in the beginning of their relationship being married, being together, and not worry about having kids yet. And also they're young, they're like 10 years out of high school. In his mind, he's like, we have time, you know, we don't have to rush anything. That's a little tricky for Spike because she's nauseous. She missed her last period. The last time that happened, Emma was born. Spike decides that she's going to take a pregnancy test, figure out what's going on, and lo and behold, she is pregnant with Snake's child. Yet he has just told her that he has no interest in having children yet. So Spike is in a place of trying to figure out if she wants to terminate the pregnancy so that they don't have to deal with having a baby so soon. And if Snake doesn't want to have a baby right now, it probably wouldn't even be a good idea for them to have a baby. She doesn't want him to start resenting the child, you know? So she's really kind of like pondering on what her options are, and her nosy ass daughter has decided to stick her nose in and give her 2 cents on the whole situation. One thing that's kind of interesting about Emma is that she is a supporter of so many different progressive issues, you know, climate change, environmental protection, animal rights. She's against sexism. Like, she is the SJW of the show, but weirdly, she is also anti-choice. She's big. She contains multitudes. So when she hears that her mom is contemplating terminating the pregnancy, she's absolutely outraged because she's like, well, if you had aborted me, I wouldn't exist, which particularly in the early 21st century, being anti-choice wasn't seen as antithetical to progressivism as it is nowadays. So I watched Law and Order, the original series, from start to finish last year, and an episode in the first season where they're talking about whether or not they agree with abortion, and one of the cops is like, if I don't want to have a baby, I can just leave. If a woman doesn't want to have a baby, she should have the right to decide that she's not going to grow a child in her body. And another one of the cops is like, I just think if we don't agree with murder, then we shouldn't agree with abortion. Those are considered to be equally viable viewpoints on the issue. So this is an episode that came out in like 1992 or something. And then in Law and Order SVU, there's one cop who is famously Catholic, Stabler, my king, and they're all having conversations about abortion, and even Stabler is like, well, you know, what a woman decides to do with her body is her right. It's a woman's right to choose. So it's interesting to see how even just in those 10 years, you know, from 1992 to the early 2000s, when the first few seasons of Law and Order SVU were being filmed, how much changed in popular opinion in terms of choice. Emma doesn't want her mom to get an abortion because she's like, if you had gotten an abortion with me, you were 14, you didn't have a job, my dad wasn't in the picture, you didn't have any idea of how you were going to support yourself. Now you're an adult, you're getting married, you're well established, it would be a waste. So she is really mad at her mom for even considering it. I think she should shut up, but she's our main character, so we're supposed to be on her side. Spike feels bad. She's already like hormonal, emotional, all of this, so she's crying, and I think she calls off the wedding. While all of this is happening, Manny, who is the hopeless romantic, as I mentioned earlier, has always really rooted for Emma and Sean to be together. She's like, I know they broke up, but he apologized, he's sorry, he said he's never going to do it again. Manny, as I mentioned earlier, is a dumb bitch, just like me. She has been trying to like get them back together, get Emma to like be okay with talking to Sean, all of that stuff. And since she is going to be at the wedding, she's like, Sean, here's an invitation to Emma's mom and Mr. Simpson's wedding. She really wants you to be there. When Emma finds out that Manny has invited Sean to the wedding, she gets really angry and she yells at her and she's like, I didn't want him to come. But Manny's like, yes, you do. Like, you know how much you like him. If I can't be with Craig, the love of my life, at least you can be with Sean, the love of your life. The important thing to know about this episode really is that Spike and Mr. Simpson, of course, end up getting married. She tells him that she's pregnant, and when he said that he didn't want to have kids yet, it really hurt her feelings and it made her think that she should just get an abortion. And knowing that she's pregnant changes his mind, and he's like, oh yeah, well, of course, we'll just have a baby. I mean, it's not what we planned. I would have liked to have spent some time, just the two of us being in a couple, but that's not what's happening, and I'm fine with that. You would think that if she had just had a conversation with him that this would have been resolved immediately, but it's that thing in TV shows where you have to like draw out the conflict in order to add more drama and have more runtime. So they get married. At the wedding, Sean shows up, and Manny has been talking to Emma. Emma's been thinking, stewing, whatever. Sean comes over to Emma. He apologizes again for what happened, and she's super embarrassed because her hair looks fucking crazy. But they have a really cute, nice conversation, and they end up sharing their first kiss. And Emma and Sean are back together. Wow! Oh. I loved this episode, if only because Emma and Sean got back together in it. Like, nothing else could have happened. Mr. Simpson and Snake could have driven off of a bridge in a flaming car, and I would have still rewatched this episode every day because this is like my OTP, one of my many OTPs on this show. But the next episode is also a major turning point in the season. The B plot doesn't really matter. Toby and his girlfriend are having problems because he's suffocating the girlfriend. He eventually has to get the hint to lay off. His girlfriend is Kendra, who is Spinner's adopted sister, remember. So Marco asked Ellie out on a date earlier in the season, and she said yes. But he has not made any moves to actually make the date happen. So Ellie is kind of like, she's not entirely sure what's going on. You know, they're best friends, they're hanging out all the time. She has a huge crush on him, but she doesn't know if he's lost interest or if he's just nervous. Meanwhile, Marco is playing basketball with the guys. They're doing a shirts versus skins game. These two hang out kind of begrudgingly because Sean is really close with Craig and Craig is really close with Jimmy and Spinner, and so they spend time together. All of these guys are at the game, you know, Craig, Marco, Spinner, Jimmy, and Sean, or Sean and Jimmy are the skins team, and then Spinner, Marco, and Craig are the shirts team. And I think they get to they're playing the game. Marco is out there and he cannot stop staring at the naked bodies of his male friends. He's not being very slick about it. So Sean notices and calls Marco the F slur. He basically says, "Stop looking at me, you F slur." And Marco is like, "Gay? Me? Never." Gross. I hate guys. I love girls, right? Boobs. Yeah. Titties. Vagina. Yeah. But Marco is feeling feelings. You know, we all go through puberty and we start to get attracted to people. We are realizing what it is that we like, what it is that we don't like. And Marco is not having the same experience as the rest of his guy friends. I think this is later in the day. The 9th graders are having their sex talk again with Dr. Sally. She comes back this season and she is talking about safe sex, not just in heterosexual relationships, but also in homosexual relationships, particularly guy-guy relationships, because she's talking about how gay men need to wear condoms when they have sex, and all the guys are making wisecracks about HIV and AIDS and how gross it is that men could be attracted to men. And Jimmy says, "I just don't understand how a guy could feel that way for another guy." And then Dr. Sally is like, "Well, it's pretty much the same way that you feel about girls. Like, it's not that confusing. You just are attracted to them." What? Jimmy, to me, again, is a king. He is really open-minded in a way that a lot of the other characters on the show, like, it takes him a minute to catch up. All you really have to do is explain something to him and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, I get it." He's not going to be stuck on his high horse about how being gay is unnatural and he doesn't understand. And as soon as she says, "Well, it's pretty much the same as how you feel for a girl," he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, whatever." The guys are all making fun of Marco because he's not really asking any questions. He's kind of nervous. And Ellie is looking at him too because she's like, what's going on in his head? She's trying to figure him out because she has a huge crush on him and she wants to go out with him. After their health class, Ellie stays back to talk to Dr. Sally and she's like, "I have a crush on a boy, but he's not making the first move. I don't know if that means that he doesn't like me." And Dr. Sally says, "Honestly, you know, boys get nervous too. Maybe you should make the first move instead of waiting around for him." So Ellie's like, "Okay, I'll ask him out instead of waiting for him to ask me out again." Meanwhile, the guys are in the hallway making jokes about Marco and how he's like a girl. They like throw a pack of menstrual products at him and they're like, "For your next period, whatever." Marco's like, "Yeah, I don't have periods. I hate F slurs. What they do is gross. Ew." And they're all like, "What? You didn't have to use slurs. We were just making jokes, whatever." But he's like, "The lady doth protest too much, methinks," is basically the vibe that they're getting from Marco. And then Marco goes to hang out with Ellie at some point and they're talking and he's like, "Look, you know, I really like you. Do you want to go out on a date?" And Ellie's like, "Oh my god, yay." Like, he's finally asked me. It's almost as if she's manifested it. So they go out to the movies to see a foreign film together, which in the early 2000s, foreign film, red flag. That means whoever it is that you're dating, girl, boy, non-binary person, gay. Ellie's trying to hold Marco's hand. She wants to like do, you know, cute datey stuff. He is like pretending to sneeze and he's getting really nervous and he just is like kind of trying to rush through the date because he's not feeling the date feelings that he wants to be for her. So the next day at school, Ashley and Terry are talking about the project that they have to do, and Jimmy is in the group with Ashley and Terry. I think I mentioned this before, but I just want to reiterate. Ashley has kind of gotten back in with the other popular kids again because they've seen that she's changed over the course of, and she's really learned from losing all her friends in an incredibly traumatic way. Ashley's like, "Oh my god, Jimmy's gonna come over to my house, like I'm so nervous." And Jimmy still is kind of holding a candle for Ashley. But Ashley and Terry see Ellie in the hallway and they ask her how the date with Marco went. And she's like, "It was kind of weird. Like, he didn't want to hold my hand. He didn't kiss me goodnight. Like, I just don't know if he's interested in me." She's really trying to figure out what's going on there. Maybe he just doesn't like me, you know? But Ashley, whose dad has recently come out as gay to her, is like, maybe he doesn't like girls at all. She has gotten a little bit more accepting since season 1. And Ellie is like, no, Marco's the straightest guy I know, okay? Like, he totally likes girls. So Ellie's really offended by that, but Ashley's like, I wasn't trying to be offensive. I just, like, it could be a possibility. The next day, they're all at Ashley's house working on their school project. Ashley, Ellie, Marco, Spinner, Jimmy, and Terry, they're all there, and they have to, like, watch this movie or whatever. And Marco and Ellie are trying to cuddle up on the couch. Oh, I forgot to say that, like, at some point, Spinner had called Marco gay again, or called him a woman again, or whatever, and Jimmy defended him, and he was like, the joke is getting old. Like, it's not funny. Stop doing that. And Marco feels the need to prove that he did, in fact, hook up with Ellie on their date. He's like, yeah, we made out. It was so cool. I touched her boobs through her shirt, and she's got nipples on there. Did you know that? Girls have, yeah. And they all are like, oh, he's lying. And very badly. He's clearly never kissed a girl before. So Marco goes over to Ellie after school and kisses her right in front of all his friends to prove that he is super straight. When they're at Ashley's house watching the movie, Marco and Ellie are cuddling on the couch, and Ellie, I don't know, she makes some excuse about needing to go get something from the kitchen and goes upstairs and gets Marco to follow her. He's like, yeah, I gotta go get like a glass of water or whatever. And they go up to Ashley's room together and start kissing a little. Ellie is very excited to be kissing Marco because, again, this is her big crush. They're like sitting on the bed, but Marco isn't quite kissing her back. So she's like, do you want to be kissing me? Like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, you're so fun and smart and beautiful. I really like you. She's like, but do you think I'm hot? And he's like, she's like, oh, Marco, do you even like girls at all? Like, are you even interested in me? And he's like, I want to like girls. I want to be interested in you. If I did like girls, it would be you that I would be interested in, but I don't feel anything. So I don't know what's wrong with me. Ellie basically just says to him, like, I know you're trying to figure things out, but if you know that you don't feel anything for me, leading me on isn't very kind of you. The next day at school, the guys are making fun of Marco and how him and Ellie like disappeared to go to the bathroom and get water for a super long time. And they're like, oh yeah, I bet you're upstairs having sex, whatever. Marco's like, yeah, totally. Yeah, heterosexual business happened in that bedroom. Ellie comes over, and while they're like making fun of him, I think Spinner is like, no, I don't believe it. You're gay. Like, you're just a girl. You didn't do anything with her. And while they're talking, Ellie comes over, and Marco basically pressures her to confirm that they had a very heterosexual time, and she does. But she tells him, she's like, I can't pretend to be your girlfriend forever. Like, at some point, you're gonna have to figure out what it is that you actually want, because you know it's not me. So Ellie is basically like being an ally for Marco, and she's just like, I know you don't like me. I know you're probably gay. If you want to go to this group for LGBT teens, I'll come with you. But Marco is like, no, I'm not ready to do that yet. Like, I don't know what I like quite yet. And Ellie just says to him, whenever you need me, I'll be there for you. I'm not mad at what happened between us. And that is the end of that. So Marco, probably definitely 100% gay. Next episode, we meet the science teacher, Miss Hatsalakos, who ends up staying and growing at Degrassi much longer than I was expecting her to. JT has a huge crush on her because she's blonde and she has giant tits. He is doing a project with her where he's like taking care of the class guinea pig or whatever, but he doesn't want the guys to know that he's soft and he cares about guinea pigs, so he lies and says that there's something going on between them, but there's nothing going on between them, and then he has to tell the truth. Oh yeah, Jimmy and Spinner are fighting because that's what Jimmy and Spinner do best. Like, they love each other, but they also are at each other's throats constantly. It's kind of iconic. Anyways, next episode, Jimmy and Sean have decided that it's best for the basketball team's efforts if they bury the hatchet and stop fucking hating each other. Jimmy extends an olive branch and invites Sean to a party that he's holding at his house, but the party is the same night that Emma's parents, Mr. Simpson and Spike, have insisted that Emma bring her new boyfriend Sean over for dinner. So Emma is like, come over, my mom's gonna make sushi, vegetarian sushi, because Emma is a vegetarian and Spike is pregnant, and it's gonna be really fun. Like, they really want to meet you because they know how much I like you, all of this stuff. But Sean is super nervous that he is going to make a absolute fool of himself. And what is Sean good at if not being the king of self-fulfilling prophecies? He's afraid that he's going to ruin his truce with Jimmy and fuck over the basketball team. He's afraid that he's going to make a fool of himself in front of Emma's parents. And so me and Emma, we're going to go have this dinner at her family's house, and then we're going to go to this party so that I can make amends with Jimmy. The dinner at the parents' house is kind of awkward because Sean is super nervous. He spills sushi all over the place and he's talking out of his butt half the time, but it ends up going fine. The parents aren't like, you can't take our daughter anywhere. He's embarrassed at having embarrassed himself at the party. And so at the dinner. So what does he decide to do when he gets to the party? Go into Jimmy's parents' liquor cabinet. Get nice and liquored up. It's giving Terry from season 1. Drinking underage on this show is never a good idea. So he gets drunk, embarrassingly so, and makes a fool of himself and breaks a bottle of alcohol, I think, and ends up getting kicked out of Jimmy's house because Jimmy is he's like, I invited you into my house and you stole my parents' booze. That's weird, man. You're weird. But while all of this is happening, Ashley and Jimmy are getting a little bit closer. They're seeing if they can make amends for how things went over the last season. So right as they're about to kiss, I'm pretty sure, is when Sean breaks the bottle of booze, and then Jimmy ends up having to kick him out of his house. And also the whole time, Sean has been drinking and Emma has just been sitting in a corner I'm not having fun. I don't know any of these people. They're all a year older than me and my boyfriend is drunk. For what reason, I don't know. So she's annoyed. She calls her mom and asks her to come pick them up. And Sean is like, don't call your mom. She's gonna know that I'm drunk and I'm gonna be so embarrassed. Basically, he just makes an entire mess for himself, and then Emma has to end up cleaning it up, which kind of a pattern for the course of this series. But so her mom drives them home and she's really understanding. She's like, we all make mistakes, we all get nervous and worried about things, but Emma just has a hard talk with Sean and she's like, you need to stop psyching yourself up into these horrid situations. In fact, I think Sean, if he was written today, would be diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder because he has a lot of those traits. Oh, the next episode doesn't mean anything to me. Liberty wants to be on the field hockey team, but she's not athletic enough, so she ends up being the manager of the field hockey team, and Manny and Emma are on it, and they win the game at the end. Hooray. After that, we get to Dressed in Black, which is another one of my favorite episodes because Ashley and Jimmy have decided that they are going to get back together, but Jimmy does not like Ashley's new goth look and he wants her to go back to being the cutie pie that she was in season 1. So Ashley makes an attempt to appease Jimmy's desires and show up as the girl that she used to be. She stops wearing so much eyeliner. She doesn't wear black anymore. While they're in English class, they're working on their Shakespeare project, which is an interpretation of a scene from the Taming of the Shrew. So Jimmy is paired up with Hazel, Paige is paired up with Spinner, and Ashley is paired up with Craig. Ashley's scene with Craig ends up being the most kind of serious and affecting one of the bunch because the rest of them take it to be a straight comedy and they play into the comedy elements that are present in the Taming of the Shrew, whereas Ashley and Craig interpret it more in a serious way and turn it into a scene that's about domestic abuse, which may or may not be because Craig is horribly traumatized by how his father beat him when he was a child. It's actually kind of a really groundbreaking interpretation of the scene. I think even for 14-year-olds to be able to look at this play and see it as the abuse circus that it is. And their teacher's like, wow, what an interesting interpretation. But through the interpretation, Ashley is able to realize that like Petruchio in The Taming of the Shrew, Jimmy is not happy with who she is, and he just wants to tame her and turn her into a completely different person. So she ends up breaking up with Jimmy at the end of the episode, and in the meantime, Craig is realizing that he's super interested in Ashley, and he likes her just the way she is. So we are coming to the end of season 2. We're back to the storyline about Paige's assault in the episode How Soon Is Now. I think we're out of soccer season and we're into basketball season, and Degrassi is playing Bardell at this big basketball game. As the captain of the Spirit Squad and the founder of the Spirit Squad, we cannot forget that, Paige is going to have to cheer at the game that Bardell is at. And for some reason in Degrassi, everybody who is athletic plays all of the sports. So Dean is also going to be at this game, and she's really nervous about having to show up and cheer in front of the guy who attacked her. So she starts acting kind of weird, but in the meantime, again, like, Spinner is trying to make his moves on Paige because he still likes her. In the meantime, Ellie and Marco are working on a school project together. Really, the most important thing that you need to know is that Marco is still being nice to Ellie, and Ellie is like, maybe that means that, you know, like, he said that he was confused before, maybe that means that he does kind of like me in a romantic way. He's like bringing her presents and giving her his mom's eggplant parmesan, and she is excited about the possibility that they could be a real couple instead of the fake one that they're pretending to be. And everybody seems to think that they are a really great match for one another. Ellie is like mad at Marco because she's like, she basically is saying that he's refusing to try to be straight for her, but it's kind of that you know, when you're like 14 and you just really want someone to fucking like you. Yeah, it's that. And he's like, you know, I'm not confused anymore. I thought about it. I figured it out. I'm gay. I'm not interested in you, and I'm sorry for stringing you along if that's how you felt. And Ellie is able to get over that. Back to the A plot. Manny, who is also on the Spirit Squad, had been talking to Dean in the hallway, and Paige, like that girl from the party, went up to Manny and she was like, you're gonna want to stay away from him. Just make sure you're never alone with him. He's not a good guy. And Manny is like, I don't believe that. And Paige starts to get short with her, and she's like, just take my word for it. Like, I was you earlier in the year. Don't fall for anything that he's telling you. And also, like, Dean is in the 11th grade and Manny is in 8th grade. That's fucking weird. Like, his friends, he shouldn't have any friends. Manny says her classic line, you're just jealous because he asked you out on a date and then didn't call you. And like, that's pretty much the story that everyone thinks, is that Dean and Paige had sex, but then he never called her again. So Paige was like, this is the thanks that I get for trying to help these bitches. And she feels even more demoralized by the whole situation. And at this point, the only people who know what happened to her are Ashley and Hazel. Dean comes to Degrassi and he's like confronting Paige, trying to talk to her, and he basically tells her that she embarrassed him when she sang that song at the Battle of the Bands, and she's like, I'm sorry, I embarrassed you? Do you know what you did to me? You insane psychopath. And he tells her to lighten up. Oh, I should also say before this that she had talked to the school counselor, Miss Sauvé, about potentially pressing charges against Dean, but because her kit didn't pull a lot of evidence and he used a condom, it's not looking good, but they're going to try and build as good of a case as they possibly can if she decides to go forward with pressing charges. But at the moment when she talks to Miss Sauvé, she's like, I'm not interested in pressing charges at all. There's no guarantee that we'll win. I don't want to do that. She's talking to Dean, she goes off on him, and then Spinner comes out and he's like, oh yeah, there she is with Dean again. And they've been talking and kind of hanging out and flirting over the course of the season, but as soon as he sees her with Dean, he's thrown off because he's like, I thought she liked me, but here's this guy that she clearly had a crush on earlier in the year, and they're talking again, and he just is like in his feelings around him. So the story that everybody seems to think is that Paige and Dean hooked up at the party, but then he never called her again. So Hazel is talking to Spinner, and she basically kind of tells Spinner, because Spinner is talking about how she like gave everything to him and they hooked up and he's mad, whatever. Hazel's like, okay, well, what if that's not exactly what happened? What if she didn't say yes? And he's like, yeah, no, the only person she said no to was me. He doesn't believe that that's what happened. Fast forward, they're in the basketball tournament, they're playing, and Paige is like, Dean won, I'm not going to cheer because I can't be in the same room as him. Like, he successfully intimidated her out of doing the one thing that brings her joy. She's sitting out on the steps, and JT, who has a little crush on her and is also the school mascot, comes out because he notices that she's not cheering. And he comes out to the school steps and he's like, hey, Paige, what's going on? Why aren't you cheering? And Paige says, they're the person who I said that I didn't want to see from Bardell, because she had talked to him earlier when he saw that she was acting a little odd, he had talked to her, and they have a bit of a rapport now because earlier in the season, she was dared by her friends to go on a date with him, and then they came and paid out her dare while they were still on the date, and it really embarrassed JT, so she apologized to him, and she has been like, she's kind of taken him under her wing as her little pet project. So they have a little bit of a friendship going on. So she tells JT, the reason I didn't want to see the guy, Dean, and she says the reason that she didn't want to see him is because at her. JT hears that and gets fucking pissed, runs into the gymnasium and pushes Dean and starts trying to punch him. Dean, who is this guy, he's teeny tiny, okay? This is before JT went through his puberty. So he's a little baby, and Dean is like a fucking 11th grader. So Dean is much bigger than him, but JT is really scrappy. Like, you know, you might be weak because you're small, but you can be scrappy. So he's like still trying to get at him, and he loudly screams that Dean is a rapist in front of everyone in the gym. And Dean like absolutely fucking loses it and starts going after JT again, but then the principals come and break everything up. Dean gets suspended from the game, JT gets sent to the principal's office, but Spinner was there and he heard all of this and he saw JT going after Dean, and he's like, wait, Hazel told me earlier that Dean had Paige, but I didn't believe her. So now he feels bad, and he also is mad because he's like, how dare you fucking do that to my friend, then come to my school acting like some big shot guy. Like, what you did wasn't fucking horrible. So Spinner follows Dean out of the school to his bus and starts beating up Dean as well. And then since Paige wasn't in the room at the game, she like sees them out there fighting, so she goes out to fight. She goes out to break up the fight, and Dean is like, I don't know, taunting her. He's basically a cartoon villain. When she breaks up the fight between Spinner and Dean, she tells Dean to his face, like, you better get ready because I am pressing charges against you and your ass is gonna go to jail. But she's finally ready to stand up to him in a court of law. And I really like how this storyline progressed over the season, because especially as somebody who watches a lot of episodes of Law & Order SVU, like, they make it seem so simple to get from A to B, and A being assaulted, and B being ready to go to court and defend yourself against the person who violated you. And I like that we're able to see her go through the journey of getting to the point where she's finally ready to press charges. Okay, the last 2 episodes of season 2 bring us back to Mr. Craig Manning. His dad has been going to therapy, he's been on medication, and he's trying to get Craig to move out of Joey's house and move back in with him. Craig doesn't really believe any of the things that his dad is saying because he's doing the same song and dance he always does. He's like, I'm better now, I'm okay, you should meet my therapist, we should go to family counseling, all of this stuff, and buying him gifts. But this is when he's like offering him this trip to Paris in exchange for Craig moving in with him again. So Craig is kind of trying to navigate having a relationship with his dad again. He introduces his dad to Ashley, who at this point is his girlfriend, and his dad, you can tell, is not really into Ashley because she seems to be a little rough around the edges, and Mr. Manning is all about appearances, but he's trying to stay on Craig's good side so that he can get his son home. Craig is gonna go out to dinner with his dad and just spend time with him and see how things are going. So he ends up going out to the dinner, and it's initially going pretty well. His dad is being really nice, but when Craig says that he's still hesitant about moving back into the house, his dad kind of becomes that old guy that he was again. He starts berating him and saying, you're going to hold yourself back by associating yourself with those types of people, like Joey, who is just a lowly used car salesman. Like, he owns his own business. What are you talking about? And Ashley, who is goth, and that apparently makes her bad, I guess. Craig is like, you're still the same appearances obsessed guy that you were before. Nothing's changed, of course. So he decides that he's had enough of his dad. He's gonna leave. His dad follows him out. They get into an argument. Craig pushes his dad, and his dad smacks him across the face in front of a plethora of witnesses, I might add. So that is the final straw for Craig. He's like, you are never going to change. You're trying to get me back into that house so that you can trap me and kill me, and I'm not going to deal with this. So he runs home to Joey's house, and he's trying to hide his face from Joey because he doesn't want Joey to see that he's been abused by his father at the next available moment again. But Joey ends up getting him to show him his face. He's like, who did you get into a fight with? And Craig is like, it was my dad. He hit me again. And Joey is like, I'm calling the police. Like, you gave him a chance. You tried to be like, well, he's my dad, so I may as well go see him. He hit you again, so I'm calling the police. But Craig is like, no, you don't have to do that. In the morning, thing, you and me will go together to Children's Aid and make it so that I never have to see him again legally. Like, I will legally move in with you, you'll take over guardianship of me, and legally I'll never have to see him again because of how horribly he beats me. In this episode too, I'm pretty sure Craig has asked Ashley to go to the luau dance because it's the end of the year and they always have an end of the year dance on this show. So Craig is planning to go with Ashley. Hazel is going to go with Jimmy, and Paige is going to go with Spinner. Because Paige and Spinner are dating now, and Hazel and Jimmy, I guess, go together because they're black. Oh yeah, Jimmy wants to go with Hazel and run against Spinner and Paige because earlier in the season, Jimmy and Spinner had a huge falling out because Spinner was really jealous of Jimmy. His family is rich, he's got money, he doesn't have to want for anything. And Jimmy had this like new, it's basically an iPod. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. You were born after 2005. First of all, I'm shocked that you're old enough to be watching this right now and be sentient. But life comes at you fast. But if you were born after 2005, we used to have this thing back in my day. We used to have this thing on an iPod. It was a separate mechanism from your telephone machine. And on the iPod, it had all your music and the internet. And on your telephone machine, you would send text messages to your mom when it was time to pick you up from the mall. As a shopping plaza in which people go. They eat fried food. They go to little stores like Forever, the 21, and H&M. Jimmy had this like new iPod or whatever, and Spinner was jealous. He wants to like have rich parents and be cool, and he doesn't have that. So his solution was to steal Jimmy's iPod, sell it. Jimmy had like a new tracksuit, I guess, and this is back in the early 2000s when getting the hottest tracksuit was a real issue for the youths. And he also had this MP3 player. So Spinner stole the MP3 player. He was going to sell it to one of the students for cash so he could buy himself a tracksuit because Jimmy had just made fun of his like off the rack Champion sweatshirt or whatever. And to think that like nowadays Champion is a brand when back in the day it was bargain basement. As Spinner is getting ready to do the transaction of the stolen MP3 player, Jimmy walks up. The guy who's supposed to buy it also walks up, and Jimmy realizes that his alleged best friend has stolen something of great value from him, and he's rightfully pissed. So they have a falling out, and that's why they're having this whole at the end of the season. Back to Craig. Like, we took such a detour. Back to Craig. The next episode, Craig has woken up and he goes downstairs to get breakfast with Joey, and Joey's like, are you sure you still want to go to Children's Aid to make sure that your dad doesn't have custody of you again? And Craig is like, I'm 100% sure that's what I want to do. But then some police officers come and knock on the door, and he's eating his breakfast, and then Joey comes in and he looks kind of somber, and he's like, Joey, what happened? What's going on? And Joey's like, Craig, your dad got into an accident last night. And Craig is like, oh, let me go get dressed. He probably did it on purpose, so I'd have to go visit him in the hospital. But Joey says, no, he's not alive anymore. And Craig is like, last thing he had said to his dad before leaving was how much he hated him and that he never wanted to see him again. And now he's never going to be able to see him again. Joey is expecting Craig to want to stay home from school and be absolutely devastated and not want to do anything. But Craig is like, no, I'm fine. I'm gonna go to school. I'm actually pretty happy that he's dead. Like, he just used to beat me. He wasn't a good dad. He would beat me and then give me presents. Like, I don't care. Craig is like weirdly happy that his dad has died. He's like kind of numb to the whole situation. And Joey has called the school and told them that Craig's dad passed away. Everybody's trying to make accommodations for him, but he's like, no, I'm fine. That's good. I don't care. Ashley, Craig's new girlfriend, is like, we don't have to go to the luau dance anymore. I know that you're grieving. You have to deal with things, whatever. And Craig is like, no, I want to go. It'll be fun. She's like, okay, if you think that's a good idea. So all the kids are going to the luau dance, right? Spinner and Paige have decided to do some preparations for the dance and go get tanned, and they end up being burnt. like very badly burnt in the tanning beds that they went to. And Jimmy and Hazel have these expensive leis that Jimmy's dad has gotten, like real flower leis that Jimmy's dad has gotten for them, but Jimmy is unfortunately incredibly allergic to them. And so they're both kind of like not on their best form for the luau dance king and queen vote. At the same time, everybody also knows that Craig's dad has just passed away. So when it comes time to announce the luau king and queen, Craig and Ashley end up winning. He's kind of like a sweetheart in the second season. I will never say that about Craig Manning again, but in the second season, I did quite like him. Craig is really excited. He's like, oh my god, yay! Like, horrible dad died. I'm the luau dance king and queen. It's the end of the school year. I have this hot girl. I'm so happy. And they go to do their dance as the king and queen, and over Ashley's shoulder, Craig sees someone who looks a lot like his dad from the back. He's like, oh my god, it's my dad. He's not dead. I was wrong. This is great. So he runs up to his dad and he's like, Dad, it's me, Craig. And the guy turns around and it's not his dad. And everyone is like, oh no. Because he'd been acting so fine about it. People were giving him condolences. He was like, I'm okay. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. He basically starts to have a breakdown. He runs out of the room. Ashley goes after him and tries to calm him down because she's been trying to be supportive this whole time and like tell him it's important to grieve, whatnot. And he yells at her that she's Miss Doom and Gloom because she's a freaky goth and she just wants him to grieve because it'll be fun for her because again, she's a freaky goth, and he runs off. Who comes after him but sweet Miss Terry McGregor. She knows what it's like to lose a parent. Her mom died when she was really young. Craig's dad has just died, and he's like, I don't understand why I'm not feeling the way that I'm supposed to feel about what happened. I'm sad, but I don't know why I'm sad. He wasn't a good person. And Terry basically tells him a story, and I think her mom died on her birthday party, or she was at a friend's birthday party, and when her dad came to tell her that her mom had passed away, the only thing that she could think about was that she wasn't going to get to eat cake. And she's like, we don't grieve always in the way that makes sense. It's okay to be happy one moment, sad another moment, have complicated feelings about what you're going through because your dad was a complicated person in your life. Terry is able to kind of like talk him down, as she's able to do with everyone on this show. I love this bitch. They go back to the auditorium where the dance is together, and Ashley comes out, and Craig apologizes to Ashley for what he said to her, and they're able to finally have their final dance as the luau dance king and queen. Spinner and Jimmy reconcile because they've both been humbled by their burnt skin and horrible allergies, and Spinner is like, I'm sorry for what I did to you, and Jimmy's like, I'm sorry for trying to get horrible revenge against you. And the other thing was Paige wanted to be the luau queen because she was like feeling like she needed a win after the whole Dean situation, and Jimmy really just wanted to do it out of spite. Oh, and Spinner wanted to get her the crown because he was like, she's my girlfriend. I was kind of mean to her at the beginning of the year because I didn't know what she was going through, and I want to redeem myself. And Jimmy was like, not on my watch. You won't be doing that with me around. They all reconcile, and they end up taking a really cute picture for the school yearbook. And that is the end of season 2. We are going into the opening episodes of season 3 of Degrassi: The Next Generation. It's been the summer, they're getting ready to go back to school, and Spike is heavily pregnant. Emma, because her mom is heavily pregnant, is starting to think about her origins. You know, she doesn't really know anything about her dad. She's only met him when she was a baby, and she doesn't have any memories of him, and she doesn't even really have any pictures of him. She's trying to ask Spike questions, but Spike is being really cagey about it. And Mr. Simpson is her dad in a way, but he also like came into her life when she was already a sentient human being, so she doesn't always feel comfortable calling him dad, and she just kind of wants to know where she came from. It's giving very Billie Eilish's song in the Barbie movie, right? Like, what was I made for? Where did I come from? Emma enlists Craig to help her in this endeavor because Craig has just lost his dad, and so he's really excited to help Emma find her dad. dad, kind of a redemption thing for him. And they're also friends because, again, Emma is Angie, who is Craig's half-sister's babysitter. They start doing research into guys named Shane McKay because Emma knows that that's what her dad's name is. She doesn't know anything else about him. They find a bunch of different men named Shane McKay. They find a doctor named Shane McKay, and they go to find him, and he's black. And I don't know if you've looked at this girl, but ain't no one drop of anything in there. So she's like, oh, okay, this guy can't be my dad. But in the meantime, Spike is like trying to get her off the trail. She's thwarting her at every turn. Her mom is not being very forthcoming. When the girls, you know, Caitlin, Lucy, all of the girls from Degrassi High come to their house for Spike's baby shower, Emma realizes that Snake is the keeper of the Degrassi High School contact information. So she goes into Snake's directory and finds Shane's address. Now, it's a little weird because he lives in kind of far away on the train. So her and Craig are going to have to skip school one day in order to go. And he appears to live in an assisted living facility. So Emma is still thinking in terms of the doctor that she met named Shane McKay. And so she's like, oh, he must be a doctor at this assisted living facility. So her and Craig are going to go off and investigate that. In the meantime, really the only other thing that's going on is that Spinner wants to get Paige a really nice locker as a new girlfriend present. And so he's switching lockers with a lot of people to try and get her the nicest one in the school. Okay, so Emma and Craig get on the train to go see Shane. And they're at the assisted living facility. She goes up to the receptionist and she's like, I'm here to see Shane McKay. Where is he? And she's like, oh yeah, he's just over here. He never really gets many visitors. I think his parents died recently, or one of his parents died recently, so he doesn't really get many visitors. And she's like, visitors? What are you talking about? They take her to, because she's assuming still that Shane is a doctor at this facility. So they take her to his room and they discover that Shane, Emma's dad, has a traumatic brain injury and he is disabled. Initially, Emma is very freaked out by this revelation. She's like, this can't possibly be my dad. You must be wrong. But he has a baby picture of her in his room. So she realizes, oh yeah, this is 100% my dad. And Craig is like, oh, well, this is a plot twist. So she goes into the room to talk to Shane and she's crying because she didn't know any of this about her dad. Her mom has kept this from her entire life. And she's like, hi, it's me, Emma. I'm your daughter. And Shane is like, you're not Emma. Emma's a baby. I know her. Look at this picture. It's Emma. And she's like, no, the last time I saw you was 12 years ago. And I've grown up since then. It's me now. And he looks at her and recognizes her and he starts crying because he hasn't seen her in years. And he's knitting something and he puts it down and gives her a hug, and it's this actually really touching reunion moment between the two of them. Something that we don't find out in this episode, but that you would know if you watched Degrassi High or Degrassi Junior High, is that soon after Emma was born, I think Spike and Shane ended up breaking up because Shane didn't want to be a daddy. He wasn't ready, and so he started to do kind of wild things because he was acting out. Again, this is an after school special of a TV show, so know that everything that happens is a warning against drug and alcohol use. He goes to a party with a friend and he ends up dropping LSD because he's being rebellious or whatever, and then he disappears. Nobody can find him. They find him the next morning at the bottom of a bridge. The bridge is up here and he's on the ground underneath of it, and it appears that he has either jumped off of the bridge or fallen off of the bridge. Either way, he has a very bad brain injury. He's, I'm pretty sure, in a coma for the rest of the series of Degrassi High, but by the time Emma has grown up, he is living in this assisted living facility because his parents couldn't take care of him anymore. That is what happened to Emma's dad, and that is what her mom never told her. They're talking for a while, getting to know each other. She sees that he likes to knit. Her mom also likes to knit. It's she's like, oh, this is so cool to meet my dad. She's getting up to leave and he's like, no, you can't leave, you have to stay, because hasn't seen her in 11 years. He's just learning that she's gone through puberty. It's a big momentous thing, and he's scared that he's never gonna see her again. And she is like, no, here's my address. You write me letters, I'll write you letters. We'll see each other again, I promise. So her and Craig go back to Toronto. A few days later, somebody knocks at the door at Emma's family home. And who is it? Shane McKay. He has taken a cab, I think, or some buses to come see Emma and Spike, assumedly, because he wants to, he's afraid that he's never going to see them again. So he's there. and he sees that Spike is there and she's pregnant again, and he sees her wedding portraits with Snake. I will say again that Snake and Spike always kind of had a thing for each other in high school, and I think Shane knew that. So once he gets to the house and he sees that Spike has now married Snake and she's pregnant with his child, he gets very upset. He starts breaking things and yelling, and he's like, Snake stole my life, like I'm trapped in this assisted living facility and I'm supposed to be at home, I'm supposed to be your husband, I'm supposed to be taking care of Emma, and that's supposed to be my baby in your belly. And the stress of what's going on sends her into early labor. She starts having contractions while Shane is freaking out, and she like tries to call someone, and he's like, put the phone down, and she's like, okay, I'm not gonna do anything. I don't remember exactly what the series of events is, but I don't know if she's able to call Emma or send her a text or whatever, but at some point Emma comes home and she sees that her dad is there and Spike is cowering in a corner, and she's like, oh, okay, it's up. And Spike also realizes that the only way that Shane would have gotten her address is from Emma, so she figures out that Emma found him and went to go see him. So she's like, oh shit. So Emma is able to calm her dad down. She gives him Spike's knitting, and he starts knitting, and Spike ends up giving birth to her baby in the living room at their home. After Shane has calmed down, he lets them use the phone again, and they eventually call the ambulance to come get Spike and the baby. And Mr. Simpson has gotten there at some point, and everything ends up working out. Shane has knit a hat, and he's like, give it to the new baby, and Emma's like, okay, that's great, and also I will see you again soon. Before he leaves, they call the facility too, and somebody comes to pick him up, but before he leaves, Emma, who had been with Craig when she went to go visit Shane, Craig took a picture of the two of them together. So Emma gives Shane a new picture of her and her dad to keep in his room at the facility. Fortunately, we never see him again. So, do we know if Emma ever went back to go see him? I have no idea, but I like to think that she would visit him on holidays and birthdays, and they hung out and went for walks, and he's well known to her children. They're like, yeah, that's Grandpa Shane, all of that. They have Grandpa Snake and Grandpa Shane. You know, like I said, Degrassi does not play about a season opener, okay? They said Emma's dad survived his fall off of that bridge, and he is living in an assisted care facility. I bet you were wondering where that bitch was. I'm going to stop the video there. Give you a little bit of blue balls to keep you coming back for more. The next video that I'm planning to make about Degrassi will hopefully be about the rest of season 3. I want to let season 3 breathe, because season 3 is quite literally one of the most iconic seasons of television to ever grace a screen. Degrassi: The Next Generation season 3, so good that 2 of the episodes were banned in the United States for several years because of the subject matter that was discussed in them. We will cross that bridge when we come to it. In the meantime, this is our current breakdown of the cast and characters. Some of these pictures will change going into season 3 because, you know, they're teenagers, they're going through puberty, they're having their experiences, they're growing up. JT doesn't still look like this, Liberty doesn't still look like this, Toby doesn't still look like this, Spinner hasn't looked like this since season 1. I'm excited to come back and tell you more about everything that happens in Degrassi: The Next Generation. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel down below. I make videos about literally whatever I want to talk about, and a lot of the time that's fun stuff that other people also care about. If there was anything in this video that you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps me to find other people who might also be interested in my channel, and leave me a comment down below about the most shocking, exciting, unexpected, or mundane thing that happened that I explained over the course of this recap, or that you remember from the first 3 seasons of Degrassi: The Next Generation. That is all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm sending you love and light. Goodbye!